Today I'm here with James, who is going to review the Cervelo S3 behind me here. Now the Cervelo S3 slipped under the radar a little bit for quite a long time, but we've got our hands on one and James has been putting it to the test. So let's get straight into it. James, can you explain where the S3 sits in Cervelo's line?
Yeah, it's really simple. So it's part of their Aero road bike range. So there are 3 different models. There's the S5, that's the one that obviously everybody has heard about. It's the one that basically took all the limelight and made this poor little thing sort of like blend into the background. And then there's the S series, which is a slightly different model, which sort of like sits a bit further down as well. So it's slap bang in the middle of the Aero range, and it's a bit more their conventional Aero race bike.
There's quite a few interesting talking points with the S3, but we'll start at the front end, which is with that stem and steerer combo, which is a little bit of a blast from the past, really, isn't it?
Yeah, so the one thing you'll probably sort of see on here is that it's a very, very smooth looking stem, and this is probably one of the best and worst features of this bike in terms of living with it. So if you were to first look at that stem and try to actually work out how to take things apart, you just can't figure it out. And it's because it uses a quill stem style. So you probably, well, a lot of you might be as old as me and remember quill stems, which is where basically the stem itself had a part steerer tube, which then sat inside the fork steerer tube, and then a wedge system tightened up inside and made it into a effective one-piece steerer. In order to adjust it, everything is done inside the stem. So you take off the steerer, the top cap, and then you'll see like a little spacer in there, and that's got some bolts on it. And then underneath there's like a little hole, and inside there, in the pitch black, is a bolt that you then use to tighten the stem up. It's really tricky unless like you get told how to use it. It's such a hard system to use.
So we wouldn't exactly describe it as the most user-friendly setup.
No, it's not. It's the good thing is, because obviously everything is integrated, if you do want to drop the stem, and I haven't dropped it yet, but I will be dropping it as well, all the spaces are split. Okay. So you don't have to disconnect everything, so you can just take things apart. So that's great. The other thing to note as well is if you have one of these bikes in a size 51 or a 49 centimeters, so smaller, you won't be able to drop the steerer completely. So you won't be able to slam your stem as standard.
Right.
Because your fork is too short. So in order to be able to do that, you need to take all that off and then cut the stem steerer. Yeah, so it can be a bit of a panic.
So we're chalking this one up as one of the more difficult aero bikes. Some are simpler, some have just gone for sort of a standard road setup, and this one we're notching up as being slightly more complicated in that system.
Yes, you are limited to only using that stem with this bike if you do buy it, so just be aware of that. In terms of some of the other features, the one thing that to point out is this is the Ultegra Di2 version, so we're talking the electronic one. And associated with that, one of the things that you will find on here is they don't situate the battery in the seat post like the majority of brands would do. So that's great if you go traveling with your bike quite a lot, because it means you can take your seat out, no problem at all. You don't have to disconnect anything. But where they situate it does make it a little bit tricky if you do need to replace a battery or do need to do a little bit of work on it. So it's actually just inside the down tube around about here. Yeah, it's really, really tricky to access. And the other thing as well is it sits in like a little sled it then zip ties the battery onto it, and there are 2 tiny grub screws that you then use to tighten it up from the outside and into it.
Right.
So it's
again, we're not kind of talking particularly user friendly. in that design either, are we?
No, but hopefully with the reliability of Di2, it does mean that it stays in place and you don't really have to worry about it. But it is, I love playing the game of hunt the battery in bikes, and this is one of those where it's not where you think it's going to be, and it certainly isn't somewhere you want to actually play with. So
now I have one thing to raise.
Yes.
It does come with the R.A.T axles, the rat.
Your favourite,
the rat axle.
Thru-axles.
Yeah, is one I have particular trouble with, and I've said as much in every review I've ever done of a bike that uses a rat axle.
I find them pretty good to use. So the way that they work is you just undo, turn a quarter of a turn, and then that unlocks it, 'cause it has like a little keyway at the other end, and you can slide it out. So it's very simple and super easy to use. So you should be able to, rather than having to unwind it completely. It can be a little bit tricky, but when they're new, they work very, very well.
Because they do round out.
But that is the one thing I was going to say, is like, if you've got these in your bike, then you need to take special care of making sure that when you put them in, that you push and engage fully. Because what happens is, and we've all had this with bikes we've either tested in the past, where they've come to us, they've already been used. If you don't push in fully, when you twist, it actually starts rounding off the edges. And then that's when you get the problems, because they don't sit in properly, do they? And then it can be, well, I think every bike you've had has had that, so it's just been a nightmare.
So I think that's plenty on the bike itself. Let's get into the riding of the bike and how it performed for you. Because you've been riding this for quite a while now.
Yes.
And you've done varying lengths of rides on it. How has it been?
It blew me away. It's one of those bikes that as soon as you get on it, you almost feel like you could turn pro. It's one of the. Yeah, it is. It was on the first go. I go, damn, this thing is fast. Now we always talk about, like, you know, aero bikes making you feel fast. But I've ridden a lot of aero bikes where I've kind of gone, this is a nice bike. But this one, I was consistently faster almost on every sort of terrain. And we're not just talking about a little bit. I was able to like sort of average 2 miles an hour faster on rides that I do a lot. And that was like quite a revelation, really. It just wants to go, and it just keeps going as well. But what I noticed more than anything else is it doesn't have that sort of that puppy dog acceleration that you find with some of the lighter sort of like race bikes, but it's just got this relentless build up of speed, and the way it can maintain that speed, I've not felt a bike like it in a long while. I went for a ride around my parents' house. So my parents live in South Wales, and I always go there to really give myself a beasting on some of the hills. And I was riding along this section of road on the sort of like tops of the valleys there, and it just wouldn't stop accelerating. And I know that sounds very, very strange, but that's exactly what it was like. I was there going, oh yeah, I'm doing 26, I'm doing 27, I'm doing 28, and I'm just going, yeah, I'll just keep going and going and going.
Is this a comfortable bike? Because I remember the old S series bikes being quite harsh. I found they were fast, absolutely no denying, but I found them to be quite uncomfortable. How have you found this, especially if it's like it goes that quickly and it's clearly a bike that is built to go incredibly fast? Has it been harsh?
It's actually not as bad as you think it's going to be. So, and again, like riding pretty rough roads and doing quite long rides on it, I didn't feel like I needed to be on a different bike. It's not a comfortable bike by any stretch of the imagination. You know, it's not designed as an endurance bike, something that's going to, you know, keep you sort of from feeling battered. You want to have that engaging feel with a bike of this type, but in terms of that relentless sort of like kicking in the back, you don't get that as much. Obviously, the one thing with this style of bike that I did notice quite a lot is you do get caught on the wind. So if the wind is coming from the sides, there are points when it can get a little bit blustery, especially as like most modern aero bikes, has quite a tall front end. So even if you were to drop the 40 mil of spacers there, that head tube is still a tall head tube. And one thing that it's not as good at doing as, say, the lighter R like Cervelo's R range is in its climbing. It gets up stuff the same way that I get up stuff, really. But I wouldn't say that it was a pleasure to be on for very, very steep climbs.
Sure.
And I do like to choose steep climbs for some reason.
Well, it's Wales.
Yeah, and that was the thing. It's like, you know, there were a few times when you sort of go, oh God, I'm almost like running out of gears here. It's not the best climber in the world. It's not the best climber in terms of road bikes. It's not even the best climber in terms of aero bikes, really. But it does the job.
And how much does it weigh?
So in this particular guise, the Ultegra Di2, it's 7.66 kilos.
Okay.
So, you know, and we would say that that's pretty average for an aero bike, but it's still quite heavy.
Par for the course is the non-high mod System 6.
Yes.
In Ultegra Di2,
Yeah.
I think, as well. Yeah, it's about the same.
Yeah.
So it's sort of, it's there or thereabouts, but you do feel that, and I did with the
You
System
do,
6, as
you
you
do.
feel that extra weight a little bit on the climbs.
Yeah, when we look at like the tyres and the wheels and things, there's nothing really to fault per se on this. It's Vittorio Rubino Pros. I do like, you know, I like these tyres. They're growing on me a lot. They're not the fastest, and that's probably, again, one of the things that I did notice here is I probably would change the tyres to something different if it was my own. I got a puncher on it as well. That was quite interesting. Luckily, it was right as I was getting back to my parents' house. But yeah, I got a front puncher.
And talking of the wheels, we've not seen these wheels before because they are a Cervelo in-house wheel, correct?
Yes, they are. So this is, they're called the One Air D5s. So Air is AER. And yeah, it's a Cervelo own brand rim. These are actually on DT Swiss hubs. So you've got reliability. So those are the DT Swiss 350 hubs. They're going to last. So that's the one good thing on this bike is that there's nothing on it where you sort of go, oh, it's a bit shonky. So those are definitely going to last.
So I've ridden the S5 that handled superbly well, and I'm wondering if that has come down to the S3 as well. What did you make of it out on the descents?
So the good thing is basically Cervelo have replicated a lot of the geometry of that S5. So with that, the handling is very, very good. We talk about, you know, sort of like handling on rails with the classic thing, but it does go where you want it to go, and it reacts to things very, very well as well. And it's like, it's one of those things where you live in the UK, you ride lots of very, very tight country lanes. Every now and again, you get caught upon one that just tightens up a little bit too much or goes the wrong way, or there's a car coming. And this thing, I could just go, and then just go round. And the one thing that I think it can definitely benefit from, if your bike fit allows, is to slam the stem as much as possible. You know, it's like anything else. You know, this is a bike that's meant to be ridden aggressively, and the handling changes according to that. Being able to actually get your weight lower down on the front does make this bike go even better around the corners.
So where does this particular model sit in the S3 range, and how many other models are there? How much variation in choice, shall we say, is there with this bike?
So Cervelo say there are actually 6 models in the S3 range. This one actually sits right at the top of it. So if you want to go anything higher than Ultegra Di2, you basically have to opt for one of the 2 frame sets that they provide. And when they say 6 models, there are actually only 2 complete bike models.
Right.
There's an Ultegra mechanical, and there's the Ultegra Di2 version, but they also do them both in rim brake as well as disc brake. So that's 4 models. So that's good for those guys that want to have rim brakes and want a rim brake race bike. The S3 is available there.
Do they do a complete build in a rim brake?
They do.
They do?
They do 2 complete builds, both exactly the same componentry levels in terms of finishing kit. So the other 2 options are a disc frame set and a rim brake frame set. So that takes it up to 6. They do 3 different color versions. So you can choose from a really, really nice subtle black with like a little bit of red on it, or they've got a very, very bright yellow, black and white, or the Team Sunweb colors. and it looks absolutely beautiful.
Now the price.
Yes.
How much does this bike cost?
So this particular bike is £5,699. But what Cervelo have behind them is this frame. Yeah, that's the one thing. Is like, and there's one thing we sometimes forget is we're not buying a bike for the group set. We're buying a bike for the overall package, but mainly for the frame and
the engineering know-how that's gone into it.
Yeah, and but it still is quite sort of a sticking point to know that it is quite an expensive bike for the actual the amount of, or the whatever kit you've actually got on it. But when you then jump on that bike and ride it, you suddenly realise that, yeah, this is actually a very, very, very good bike. And there's nothing, said apart from like my personal choice of tyres, there's nothing that I would actually want to change on the bike.
Great, well, thanks very much, James. That was James's review of the Cervelo S3 for £5,699. If you have liked this review, then please do leave a comment in the comment section below. And likewise, if you have any other bikes that you'd like to see us test, do let us know as well. And don't forget to like and subscribe to the Cycling Weekly YouTube channel, and we'll see you next time.
I don't often get on a bike and find myself going fast in every area, and I didn't on this. Because I was backing myself in the corner.
Working with M. Night Shyamalan.
I just want to go